Be careful what you call divine silence tonight. You may be building an entire interpretation of your life around the wrong diagnosis. Chosen one, this is not a warning against you, it is a warning for you. Think about the last time you knew what you needed to do. For a few hours, the answer felt simple and clean. Then morning came, and doubt covered the same decision again. You asked for another sign, even though something inside you already knew what the first sign meant. That pattern matters more than you think. Before this message ends, you will understand three things clearly. First, why sincere people can mistake mental noise for divine silence. Second, why repeated confirmation can make clarity harder to hold. Third, what to do when your spirit feels awake, but your mind feels overloaded. There is also something I will bring back later. It comes from a very different conversation about the human mind. I want you to understand the problem first, then decide whether it belongs in your life. But here is your first piece of value right now. When clarity disappears only after a decision becomes real, that does not automatically mean the decision became wrong. Sometimes uncertainty rises because action would cost you the safety of staying exactly where you are. That is the beginning of what I call the confirmation trap. Look at your own pattern for a moment. You feel clear while the choice is still theoretical. Then, action becomes possible, and your mind suddenly produces 10 new questions. You search again. You replay old conversations. You wonder whether God changed the answer overnight. Maybe he did not. Maybe the pressure of movement exposed your fear. That distinction can save you months of unnecessary waiting. Fear can feel urgent. Fear can sound intelligent. Fear can even borrow spiritual language while quietly asking you to remain exactly where you have always been. So, ask yourself one uncomfortable question tonight. How many times have you asked heaven to repeat an answer because repeating the question felt safer than living the answer? Do not answer quickly. Maybe you already know the conversation you need to have. Maybe you know the habit that has to end. Maybe you know the first small step to take. The missing piece may not be another message. If this pattern found you, mark this moment with the words, "I hear the call." Not as superstition, not as proof that a miracle is guaranteed. Use it as a decision to listen differently tonight. Let those words mean that you are willing to separate what you know from what you fear. Because the confirmation trap is only the surface. Underneath it is a deeper gap. That gap explains why you can feel chosen and sincere while still struggling to move. And this is where the wrong diagnosis begins to break. You may have called the experience abandonment. You may have called it spiritual failure. You may have assumed silence meant rejection. But what if the message was never completely absent? What if the problem was that the receiver had become too crowded to hold it? That is the truth we are opening next. The first thing you need to understand is simple. Clarity does not always disappear because the answer disappeared. Sometimes clarity is still present beneath competing thoughts, emotional pressure, unfinished conversations, and the constant demand to react. Chosen one, picture what happens after one clear moment. You pray or sit quietly. Something settles inside you. Then your phone lights up. A memory returns, and your mind begins collecting reasons to doubt what felt clear moments ago. Most people make the same interpretation. They assume the clarity was false because it did not remain effortless. They say God must be changing direction. They say they were too emotional. They say they imagined the whole thing. But a clear decision becoming difficult does not prove the decision was wrong. This is what I call the receiver gap. The message may not be missing. The receiver may simply be crowded. Think of attention as a limited room. Every unresolved fear takes space. Every repeated notification takes space. Every imagined disaster takes space. Every conversation you keep rehearsing takes space. When the room becomes crowded, even an important thought can feel faint. because 10 other thoughts are speaking at the same time. That does not mean every inner feeling is divine guidance. It means you need a better way to separate signal from noise. You cannot call every impulse God. You also cannot call every moment of uncertainty a command to stop. Discernment requires patience, evidence, and enough inner space to notice what keeps returning. Here is a practical test. Ask yourself 3 questions. What do I know? What am I afraid of? What evidence would actually change my mind? The first question brings you back to facts. The second exposes emotion without shaming it. The third reveals whether you are genuinely seeking truth or simply delaying a choice. If no realistic evidence would ever feel sufficient, then the problem may not be lack of information. The problem may be your demand for perfect certainty. This matters because spiritual people can become especially vulnerable here. You care deeply about making the right choice. Those intentions are sincere, but sincerity alone does not protect you from overthinking. Sometimes the desire to obey perfectly becomes a hidden reason to never move. You keep waiting for a feeling so complete that risk disappears, but almost no meaningful decision comes with that kind of certainty. Faith and wisdom still leave room for responsibility, correction, and learning as you move. If you are still with this, you are probably not looking for another comforting label. You are looking for an explanation you can actually use. That matters. It means you are willing to examine the pattern instead of turning every difficult feeling into a prophecy about your future. So return to one recent decision. Do not choose the biggest decision of your life. Choose one that has repeated for weeks. Maybe it involves work, a conversation, a creative project, or a boundary. Write nothing if you cannot. Just hold it clearly in your mind. Now separate the 3 layers. What is known? What is feared? What is missing? You may discover that the unknown part is smaller than you thought. You may also discover that fear has been wearing the clothes of discernment. And once you see that, another question appears. If the receiver becomes crowded, what keeps filling it so quickly? Why does one clear answer create 3 new searches, 5 new opinions, and another night of asking for confirmation? That is where the next trap begins. The receiver gap explains why clarity can become faint, but it does not explain why you add more noise after clarity arrives. That pattern has a name. It is the confirmation trap. Chosen one, the trap begins innocently. You want to be careful. You seek one more message, one more opinion, one more sign. Nothing is wrong with checking facts. The problem begins when checking never produces a point where you are willing to decide. Then confirmation becomes a loop. You search until you feel relief. The relief lasts for an hour. Doubt returns, so you search again. Soon, you are not using information to make a decision. You are using information to regulate anxiety. That is a very different process. Discernment asks for truth. Fear asks for certainty no human being can receive. This is why more confirmation can make you less clear. Every new opinion creates another branch to examine. The mind starts treating uncertainty as danger, so it keeps collecting information without reaching a conclusion. You hear one message that feels deeply relevant. Then you search for another message to confirm it. The second one says something slightly different. Now you need a third. By the end of the night, you have more content and less peace. Reassurance can become addictive when it is used to escape uncertainty. The mind learns that every uncomfortable question needs an immediate answer. Some decisions become clearer only after you stop feeding the question. Use a simple 3-part test. Known, unknown, feared. Known means facts you can verify. Unknown means information you genuinely do not have. Feared means outcomes your mind is imagining without proof. Keep those categories separate. Most confusion grows when fear quietly enters the unknown column and starts pretending it deserves equal authority. For example, you may know a job is draining you. You may not know how long the next search will take. Then fear adds another sentence. You will fail, and everything will collapse. That sentence is not knowledge. The same pattern appears in relationships. You may know a boundary has been crossed repeatedly. Fear says you will lose everyone if you speak honestly. Again, that is not knowledge. When you separate these layers, clarity often returns. Not perfect certainty, clarity. That is enough for a responsible next step. If this is landing, use the words I choose clarity. Let them mean something specific. You are not promising to become fearless tonight. You are choosing to stop treating fear as evidence. You are choosing to let facts remain facts, questions remain questions, and imagined disasters remain imagination. Now notice what happens when the loop weakens. Your body settles a little. Your mind stops demanding another sign every 10 minutes. The decision still matters, but it no longer feels impossible. Sometimes peace is simply the absence of unnecessary noise. Imagine tomorrow morning. You resist the urge to search immediately. You sit with one decision for 5 quiet minutes. Then you choose one small action that matches what you already know. That is how movement begins, not with prophecy or total certainty. It begins when clarity becomes usable. But another mystery remains. Why did this often feel easier when you were younger? Why did curiosity once move faster than self-doubt? Why did ideas come before you learned to question every one of them? The next piece is not about becoming childish again. It is about understanding what may have been buried beneath years of noise. You may remember a time when your mind moved differently. Ideas arrived faster. Curiosity came before caution. You could become absorbed in something for hours without wondering whether every thought was useful, impressive, or safe. Chosen one, that does not mean childhood was perfect. It means something important was easier to access. You explored before judging yourself. You imagined before asking permission. You followed a question because the question itself felt alive. Then, life became louder. Responsibilities multiplied. Screens began competing for every quiet second. Stress trained your attention to scan for problems, and repeated pressure taught your mind to protect itself before creating. This is where people often make a painful conclusion. They say the gift is gone. They say age took it. They say they became lazy, dull, or spiritually disconnected. But those explanations can become identities once repeated long enough. I want to give this pattern a name. The buried signal. The signal is the part of you that can notice, connect, imagine, and respond with clarity. Buried does not mean destroyed. It means access can become harder when stress, distraction, poor rest, and constant switching pile over the same capacity. You may not have lost your gift. You may have buried access beneath years of noise. That distinction matters because one story ends in resignation, the other creates responsibility. If the gift is gone, you wait for something external to return it. If access is crowded, you can begin changing the conditions around the receiver. Be careful here. Not every moment of brain fog has the same cause. Sleep, health, stress, medication, grief, and many other factors can affect concentration. If something feels persistent or concerning, practical medical support can matter. But there is still a question worth asking. How much exhaustion comes from living, where attention rarely finishes, one thing before another demand arrives? Think about an ordinary day. You wake and reach for a screen. A message interrupts breakfast. A headline interrupts the message. Work interrupts the headline. Then worry interrupts the work. And by evening your mind has changed direction countless times. No wonder stillness can feel unfamiliar. No wonder a clear thought sometimes disappears before you trust it. Your inner life may not be empty. Almost nothing may stay quiet long enough to be heard. So stop insulting yourself for a moment. Do not call yourself lazy when you are overloaded. Do not call yourself broken when you are scattered. Name the condition accurately, because accurate names create better choices. If this is speaking to you, use the words restore what remains. Let those words mean that you are willing to protect what is still alive in you. You are not trying to become the child you once were. You are recovering curiosity without losing wisdom. You are creating enough space for attention to deepen again, so what is already within you has a fair chance to surface. And this is where a very different line of research enters the story. It does not begin with prophecy. It begins with a question about how the human mind functions when different systems work together instead of competing. I am not going to name the tool yet. First, you need to understand why this research caught my attention. Because if the buried signal is real, the next question is obvious. Can the condition of the receiver be supported in a practical way? Hold that question. Can the condition of the receiver be supported in a practical way? Over the last several years, I came across a very different conversation about mental clarity. It did not come from a sermon, a prophecy, or another promise that you simply need stronger belief. It came from people studying how the brain coordinates information. What caught my attention was not a claim that science can explain God. It cannot. The interesting part was much smaller and more practical. Some researchers have spent decades studying how different regions of the brain communicate, coordinate, and contribute to integrated thinking. That matters because your spiritual life does not happen outside your body. Prayer uses attention. Discernment uses memory. Decisions use focus. Reflection uses the same human system that becomes tired, distracted, stressed, and overloaded during ordinary life. So, consider a possibility. What if part of what you have been calling a spiritual blockage also has a practical side? That does not reduce faith to biology. It simply refuses to pretend your mental condition is irrelevant. A tired receiver may struggle to hold a clear thought. A scattered receiver may keep reopening decisions that were already examined carefully. Later, I will show you the specific approach that brought this question into focus for me. I want you to hear what it is, what the developers say it is designed to do, and where the claims need to be treated with discernment. But not yet. Because there is a trap here. If I gave you a tool before finishing the diagnosis, the tool would sound like the answer to everything. It is not. No audio, practice, routine, or device should become a substitute for wisdom, sleep, medical care, honest conversation, or responsible action. The deeper truth comes first. You have already seen the confirmation trap. You have already seen the receiver gap. You have also seen how the buried signal can disappear beneath years of constant noise. It would be easy to stop here and say the solution is simple. Stop seeking signs, reduce distraction, trust yourself more. That sounds satisfying. It is also only half the truth. Stopping unnecessary noise does not automatically create movement. You can put the phone down and still procrastinate. You can understand your fear and still avoid the conversation. You can feel peaceful during prayer and still return to the same pattern tomorrow. That is the midpoint most people miss. Removing noise creates space. It does not decide for you. Clarity can return, but clarity still needs somewhere to go. This is why the next layer matters more than everything we have covered so far. The problem is not only receiving insight. The problem is converting insight into behavior that changes the shape of your life. Maybe you have experienced this already. You have pages of notes, saved messages, powerful moments, clear realizations. Yet when you look at the last 6 months, the same decision is still sitting in front of you. That does not make the revelation false. It means revelation and movement are not the same process. So keep the research question open. We are coming back to it. But first, We need to solve the missing piece between knowing and doing, because that missing piece is where delay survives, even after the noise becomes quiet. You can understand something deeply and still not live it. That is not hypocrisy. That distinction changes this entire message. Insight is a moment of recognition. Movement is a sequence of behavior. The first can happen in seconds. The second requires attention, decision, repetition, and courage after the emotional intensity fades. Chosen one, look at how often this pattern appears. You hear a sentence that changes how you see your life. You write it down. You feel lighter. Then 2 days pass, and the old routine quietly takes control again. Most people blame motivation. They tell themselves they did not want it badly enough. They assume stronger faith would produce stronger action. But motivation is unstable, and feelings are not a reliable system for changing behavior. I call this the revelation gap. It is the distance between seeing what is true and building a life that reflects what you saw. The gap survives because insight feels complete. Relief arrives, so part of you mistakes understanding for completion. But understanding is only the beginning. If a boundary is needed, have the conversation. If constant switching damages attention, change the environment. If fear drives delay, take one responsible step while fear remains. This is the part that requires honesty. You may not need a stronger message. You may need a smaller action. Clarity can open the door. Only action walks through it. That sentence changes the frame. Stop measuring progress by inspiration. Measure what became different after the insight arrived. Did you make the call? Did you remove the distraction? Did you schedule the appointment? Did you write the first page? Did you say no, where you kept saying yes? These actions may look ordinary. That is why people underestimate them. Much of transformation becomes visible through repeated choices that nobody applauds. This is also where your body matters. When an action feels risky, tension can appear before the mind produces reasons. Then, the mind builds a story around that tension, and hesitation starts sounding like wisdom. You do not need to fight your body. Notice the sequence. Sensation comes, interpretation follows, then behavior repeats. Once you see that sequence, you gain a place to intervene. Breathe, name the fear, return to the facts, then choose one step small enough to complete without total certainty. That is how the revelation gap begins to close. If this is where you have been stuck, use the words, "I release the delay." Do not use them as magic. Use them as a commitment to stop confusing emotional intensity with actual progress. Now return to the question that has been open since earlier. I told you there was research I would return to. I waited, because a solution becomes useful only after you understand its problem. You now understand the shape. The issue is not simply more information. You may need better conditions for attention, clearer separation between fear and fact, and practical support for responsible action. This is where the research matters. A laboratory cannot prove your calling. A product cannot deliver obedience. Technology cannot replace prayer, wisdom, sleep, healthcare, or disciplined action. It matters because the receiver is physical as well as spiritual. Attention has biology. Focus has limits. A living brain can become rested, overloaded, scattered, or supported. So the question changes. It is no longer, how do I force God to give me another revelation? The better question is this: how do I create conditions where the clarity I already have can become more usable? Everything so far can reduce unnecessary noise, but reducing noise is only one side. The other is supporting the receiver, then turning clearer attention into deliberate action. In a moment, I will close the earlier loop. I will explain what historical science established and what the developers of a specific tool claim to build from it. Then decide with your own discernment whether that tool deserves a place in your life. Hold the core truth. The secret was never one more revelation. The secret was becoming able to use what had already been revealed. The secret was never one more revelation. The secret was becoming able to use what had already been revealed. Here is the plain truth. You may not be missing guidance. You may be carrying too much noise to hold guidance long enough for it to become action. That noise can come from fear, stress, distraction, poor rest, and the habit of reopening decisions already examined carefully. So the first step is not mystical. Protect attention. Separate facts from fear. Give important decisions enough quiet to become clear. Then act before the mind creates another 100 reasons to delay. This matters for the person who has spent years believing fog means failure. It matters for the chosen one, who is ready to stop turning confusion into identity. You know more than you think. The question is whether your present state lets you use what you know. This brings us back to the research I asked you to hold earlier. In 1981, Doctor Roger Sperry received the Nobel Prize for work involving the specialized functions of the two cerebral hemispheres. That historical work did not test the tool I am about to describe. It did not prove that an audio track can change your destiny. The developers of one program say their approach draws from the broader idea that coordinated brain function matters for integrated thinking. Before I name it, here are two reports. According to the product material, a woman from California described constant fog and emotional pressure. She said that after using the program, she felt clearer, calmer, and more present. A man from Texas reported carrying work and family pressure while feeling mentally dull. According to his account, his thinking later felt sharper and decisions became easier to organize. These are personal reports, not guarantees. The program is called the Genius Switch. The product material describes it as an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence created by a team led by Doctor Daniel Barone. The developers call their method neural sync technology, and they position it as support for whole brain activation and coordinated mental functioning. They say it is not simply another ordinary relaxation track. Their claim is that the sequence was designed around a different model of coordinated brain activity. That is their explanation, and it deserves the same discernment you would bring to any commercial claim. The Genius Switch is not for everyone. It is for the person who recognizes the clarity problem we have defined and who wants to examine a practical tool designed around that problem. A tool does not replace God. It does not replace obedience. It does not replace sleep, medical care, prayer, wise counsel, or responsible action. According to the product material, the regular price is $49. The current offer described there is $39, with lifetime digital access and 4 bonuses. They include a guided visualization, a grocery guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The offer also states that purchases are backed by a money-back guarantee under the terms on the official page. Read those terms before deciding. Choose it only if the tool fits a problem you genuinely recognize. If you want to examine the same resource, use the official link in the description or the pinned comment. Then make your own decision. Clear eyes, clear mind, no pressure. The tool does not replace God. The tool does not replace obedience. It does not surrender for you. It does not make the hard decision for you. What it can do, at most, is support the condition in which clearer attention becomes easier to protect. That is why we return to the deeper current now. Your calling is not hidden inside a product. Your identity is not stored inside an audio track. The most important work still belongs to the choices you make when nobody is watching. For the chosen one who felt something stir when the mind was mentioned earlier, the resource is still in the description and the pinned comment. You can examine it there. That is enough. The rest of this message belongs to what happens after clarity arrives. Imagine tomorrow morning. You wake without reaching for your phone in the first few seconds. The room is quiet. One decision that has followed you for weeks comes back into awareness. This time, you do not immediately search for another answer. You notice what is already known. You notice what is still unknown. You notice what is merely feared. Then you choose one small step that matches what you know. Maybe the step is a message. Maybe it is a boundary. Maybe it is one page of work that has waited too long. Maybe it is an appointment you kept postponing. The action is not dramatic, but something important changes because you stop asking uncertainty to disappear before movement begins. Then, imagine the effect spreading outward. You are less reactive in conversation. You listen before defending. You finish one meaningful task before opening 5 more. You pray from presence instead of panic. That is what clarity can look like in ordinary life. Not constant certainty, not a supernatural feeling every hour. It is the ability to remain present long enough to choose with wisdom, then adjust when new information actually appears. Before this ends, I want to give you one sentence to carry into every future moment when you think God has gone silent. I will give it to you after one final exercise. If you are somewhere safe, let your eyes close softly. Let your shoulders drop. Do not force your breathing. Just notice one breath arriving, then leaving. Now imagine a room filled with overlapping voices. None of them are evil. Some are fear, some are memory, some are other people's expectations, some are unfinished questions you have been carrying for too long. In your mind, do not fight them. Let the volume lower, one layer at a time. One voice becomes quieter, then another, then another. The room does not become empty. It becomes clear enough for you to notice a doorway that was already there. Walk toward that doorway in your imagination. You are not walking toward a guaranteed future. You are walking toward the next responsible step that has remained visible beneath the noise. Place one hand over your chest if that feels comfortable. Notice the warmth of your hand. Notice the weight. Let your body remember that clarity does not require panic. Now say this inwardly. I do not need another sign to honor what I already know. Stay there for one breath. The doorway was not created by the silence. The silence simply helped you notice what had been there. And this is where the final truth becomes personal. The final truth is not that you were abandoned. It is not that every delay was punishment. It is not that every uncertain moment meant God had withdrawn the answer. Sometimes the answer was quieter than the fear surrounding it. Sometimes you needed more information. Sometimes you needed rest. Sometimes you needed wise counsel. And sometimes you already knew enough to take the next responsible step. Chosen one. This is where the primary question closes. What if God was not withholding? What if the invitation was to become quieter, clearer, and courageous enough to live what you already knew? Release the shame attached to the fog. Release the belief that confusion makes you unworthy. Release the need to collect endless confirmation before taking one honest step. Now make these words your declaration. I am not abandoned. I am not defined by fog. I do not worship certainty. I can discern and move. I honor what I know. I remain open to correction. I choose clarity over compulsion. I choose faithful action over endless confirmation. And when fear returns, because sometimes it will, you do not need to treat its return as proof that you failed. Fear can speak without becoming your leader. When uncertainty returns, you can ask the same 3 questions. What do I know? What is genuinely unknown? What am I only afraid might happen? Then choose again. One clear step, one honest conversation, one protected hour, one decision that matches the truth you can responsibly see today. If you want to mark that decision, use the words, I walk in clarity. Let them mean that you are finished, asking fear to give you permission to live. I walk in clarity. Carry that sentence gently. You do not need to prove anything tonight. You do not need to create a dramatic sign before you sleep. You only need to remember this. Silence is not always absence. Uncertainty is not always a command to stop. Clarity is not the elimination of every question. Sometimes clarity is simply knowing the next faithful step and being willing to take it while the rest of the road remains unseen. May your mind become quieter where noise has ruled. May wisdom become clearer where fear has spoken too loudly. May courage meet you at the exact place where knowing must become action. And may you remember that no tool, message, or moment can replace the responsibility and dignity of your own discernment. You are allowed to move carefully. You are allowed to move wisely. You are allowed to move without perfect certainty. Amen. And when the noise returns, remember the truth from tonight. Silence is not always absence, and uncertainty is not always a command to stop.